Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com, and you'll find my 6 podcasts: the Podfather, helping people become podcasters; the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption but with solutions; the Crypto, all things blockchain technology; meditation podcast; speaking podcast; and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Speaking and Meditation podcast, and you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster, and you'll understand in a reason why I'm actually putting this out on post. My guest, who was actually on my meditation podcast a couple of years ago, episode number 139, and we had a fantastic conversation. Spirit author, artist, activist, lifelong yoga and meditation practitioner, naturalist, student from St. Augustine in Florida. Please welcome teZa Lord.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, what a beautiful day it is here in St. Augustine, Florida, USA.
So, well, welcome back again. And I know we had a beautiful conversation the last time, so I'm looking forward.
It was fun. I like fun. I like fun. I like joy. And even if there's a lot of crap going on and bad stuff, I go for the joy because there's always at the center of everything. We're alive. It's so great, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're doing so many things and you're a beautiful artist and everything. And I know in your books you do your own art and everything. But for those that don't know you, you might just kind of take them through a little journey about this.
Ooh, wow. Do we have like a week? A little journey. Well, I'm just an ordinary girl who always felt it when I was a kid. Wow, there's like this connection. I kept hearing like not so much voices, but like whispers, like life is going to be really amazing. I'd say, really? Because it's pretty bad now as I'm doing the dishes and getting spanked for being, a tomboy. I kept having, I guess it was deja vu. I kept saying, I've been here before. I've seen this before. I know you. And I recognized things and I kept going for the things that I recognized. And so I was very comfortable being a rebel because I wasn't comfortable in the family I was born into. But they say we choose our families. I've always tried to figure that one out. But okay, why did I choose to be an American? Why did I choose to be a woman? Why did I choose to be in this particular family? But each one of those things led me closer to what I am today. And so everything is a stepping stone. For instance, my parents had conflict about religion. They had conflict about social sides. One was economically deprived and the other one had high hopes. And there was a lot of conflict going on. There was also addiction. And so there was turmoil, there was chaos, there was even violence, and I just kind of tuned it out and I got into addiction myself. And so that's when things started spinning out of control. The first half of my life was not wasted because nothing's wasted, but I just went on this hell-bent fury because I was angry. And so addiction, I have found now that I'm out of addiction for 40 years. It's been 40 years this coming year, 2024, when I finally put down drugs and alcohol. I have found that the human race is all about addiction. We get addicted to whatever our thing is, whether it's politics or religion or shopping or the news or for me, it's spirit since I got sober. So my books have chronicled this story. And if anybody really wants to know all the juicy details, because I really did have an amazing adventure, and I still do every day, but now it's devoted to creativity. But before that mark in my life, when I decided to put down drugs and alcohol, I went on adventures and I lived in the Caribbean for 10 years. I sailed everywhere, had businesses everywhere. And basically, I called myself a she pirate. and I'm not kidding. It was really like that. I would have beer for breakfast and, another beer for lunch and all that stuff that alcoholics and drug addicts do. And it was not what everybody should do because it can end in early death. And for me, it ended up in a really bad jail, a jail cell. in the Dominican Republic, of all places, which is not a good place to be thrown in jail. And so then my life went into a second stage. At the age of 36, I really embraced what I call the light, because I was living in the dark. And so to me, you have to really embrace the dark in order to even recognize the light. Jung, the great psychiatrist, talks about the shadow and the dark a lot. And not to run away from the dark, but to say, it's part of me. I have to learn from it. And then you choose. You choose to be in the light, or for those who don't know, they stay in the darkness. And nowadays, they call it just being asleep. You're not yet awakened. And so that's basically my story. And anybody who wants to know all the details, I write nonfiction. And my latest book, which is coming out very soon, is my first fiction book that I'm publishing. And so I just love the fact that I'm an adventurer. And to me, even being in one place at one time is an adventure. So I've learned to make life an adventure, no matter what is happening. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Beautiful. So I'm just wondering, you were in that cell. Is that when the light came on, or what was the exact moment?
Oh, no, I wasn't ready yet. They're in the cell. And it was horrific. It was a cell that didn't have facilities. There was no toilet there. It was, they give you a bucket of water to flush down a hole. It was really ghastly. It was on the border with Haiti. And my other cellmate was a young lady who had killed her husband for beating her and putting her in misery. She was married at a very early age, like 14 or 15, and she murdered him with rat poison. Poor girl, but she was a really sweet person who was serving her 30-year sentence, and that was her little home. No, it was horrific to stay alive in that cell, just to stay alive. And when I came out, you'd think that would be a time when somebody would stop and say, oh, I'm ready to stop. But addiction has you by the throat. I mean, obviously you're not an addict, right? Because, people who are in addiction, it takes a bottom. And the jail thing was a bottom, but I'd already had like somebody trying to kill me, this and that and that. It wasn't yet the bottom, but the bottom that finally got me was what I call a spiritual bottom. One day I just looked in the mirror and I saw nothing but nothing. I looked in my eyes and I saw nothing. There was no spark. And I just said, wow, this is like being dead. So that was the bottom that really got me. And that happened within a couple of months after the jail situation. But that's going to be the next book after the novel gets published. And that's going to be, everybody's always been asking me, we want to hear the nitty gritty stuff. We want to hear about the sheep I read and everything. Well, it was really hard for me because the whole time I was in prison, I was writing like crazy. I only had so much paper and my handwriting was like this. And because I just, if I die in prison, how will anybody know about me if I don't leave a record? So I wrote everything I could remember from before birth, even just, wherever I was before I was in that prison cell, I wanted to record it. And that was in, before the, when was that, 1982. And I have never been able to look at those 5 big journals because it's just so, first of all, so tiny, makes my eyes go crazy, and it's just a little painful. And you put a little slant on things anyway when you're in a dire situation. I will refer to them as I make that next book, the true story of my pre-light teZa, which wasn't even my name at that time. I changed my name. My name teZa is to signify that I have chosen to be in the light. Before, when I was in the darkness, I went by my last name, which was Bates. I was known as Bates. Everybody called me Bates. If they wanted to know what kind of a name is that, I said, that's my name. I never told anybody what they call the Christian name, the first name. But
and I say with your name,
it's important to change your name if you don't like it.
And just curious because, like, for those maybe just listening, but this video is going out on Spotify, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble. But the way you write your name, you don't have a capital T. You have Lord
Right.
as T-E and a capital Z. And just curious, what's the reasoning behind that?
Oh, there's a bunch of reasons. Okay, so first of all, my official name is teZa. Black people love that. teZa. Yeah, I'm teZa. Well, L is from my leftover Christian name, which was, I'll tell you, Linda. When I was born, everybody was named Linda because they had this song, maybe you've heard of it. The Linda song, wherever I sleep, I never count sheep. I count all the charms about Linda. So that came out I don't know when, but everybody was Linda, girls. Maybe they named a few boys Linda too. And so I keep the L because when I changed my name, my mother was highly offended. She sent me a letter. It was very bulky. He says, before computer days, I opened it up and there was, in a cotton wad, was a mirror. And it said, take a good look at yourself, Linda. Because that's the kind of family I was born into. They did not approve. So everything I've done since birth has been just following my bliss, not my parents, not my upbringing, culture, not my this, not my that. And so the teZa came from Spanish-speaking friends of mine who knew my name was Bates, but in Espanol, in Spanish, it's Baptez, and they call me Bateza. And when I heard teZa, I said, that's me. So I keep it teZa, and the reason I capitalize the Z is I was Z Lord. When I married my beautiful husband, Carter Lord, I changed my last name because, who could say no to a beautiful name like teZa Lord? And I kept the Z capital because I signed my paintings Z Lord. Like, this is one of my paintings, and it's signed Z Lord. And it's also the name of my podcast. With my husband, we co-host it. So teZa Lord. And I'm a big fan of Bell Hooks, who is she's passed away now. And she never capitalized her name. That was her pen name. But she kept it small b, small h for Bell Hooks. She's a philosopher. So, a lot of reasons.
Very good. So I know that since we last spoke, you've been touring around and Bolivia, Patagonia, and so what kind of crazy things did you come across? What things up? Did you feel energy?
Well, before the pandemic, okay, let's go back to before that. I think we talked during the pandemic. So my husband and I are big campers, and we love the wilderness. We don't go to campsites. We don't go to places where the crowd goes. We never go to hotels. We either get a tent and a camp, or we rent a camper. Excuse me. And so before the pandemic, we took a 6-month camping trip. And so we're very seasoned. We know how to just adapt. So when the pandemic came, it was easy for us to just be self-sufficient, to just be with ourselves and not have to have socializing and partying and friends even, because we were used to being isolated, but in beauty. And where I live, outside my window, I have created the most amazing paradise. So I'm not only an artist with paint, but I'm an artist with plants. So we wanted to take a really beautiful trip, and we wanted to go to Patagonia, mainly because we're both sailors. We love to read about sailing stories like Joseph Conrad and other contemporaries, Joshua Slocum, sailing alone around the world. And we had read and heard about Tierra del Fuego. And of course, that's the Cape, the treacherous Cape, the Horn. And a lot of shipwrecks have been down there. We wanted to see the energy of the earth down there. And then I started reading a book that fascinated me, that was published early in the 20th century by a descendant of the first white person, colonist, who was a missionary who went from England down to Tierra del Fuego and learned the ways of the indigenous, learned the language of the indigenous. And I just love the indigenous, being an American. And there's also indigenous in my blood because my ancestors came from the second load of pilgrims on one side. And then my mother was first generation Lithuanian. So I'm a blend. I'm a perfect, what we call American mutt. and a blend of very old and rather new. And so we went to, our destination was Tierra del Fuego to feel the power. Magellan was the first guy who officially sailed around the world, but he didn't make it. But his ships went back to Spain. And the way you can navigate down at the very tip of South America is called the Magellan Straits, because he's the one who found the way. Because if you're going way out to the ocean, you're going to, probably get shipwrecked because the waves are just horrendous. And so that was our reasoning. But the impetus of the trip was my husband, who is 77, and he's an avid tennis player. He was invited to go to the World International Tennis Championship in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing, right? The category, of course, he was in was over 75. And believe it or not, these tennis guys, they play until they drop. Literally, they drop right in the tennis court. So Carter, he actually won. He and his partner, they played doubles. They won the tennis doubles championship of that year, which was last year, 2022. And that's why we went to Bolivia. I had already been to Bolivia once upon a time in my life. I did the whole La Paz thing and the Lake Titicaca and exploring around the northern part. So we started going south. And then Bolivia is just so wonderful because everybody is an indigenous there still. And when you go to other countries, you don't feel the indigenous so much. But in Bolivia, they're just part of the culture. Everybody's still wearing their indigenous garb and different hairstyles, different hat styles, different chewing of coca, because everybody's chewing coca because of the high altitude. That's one of the reasons that coca is still part of the indigenous culture, because without coca, you really have a hard time even breathing in high altitude. So we started in Bolivia and spent over a month there. And then we went to Uruguay, because neither one of us had been to Uruguay, and we'd like to be in places we haven't been before. Uruguay was just the opposite. It was like being in New Jersey. It's very, very democratic, no indigenous, because when the Spanish came, they raped them all out. And it's all very much like being in parts of the States, big tractor trailer trucks and everybody going to work. And so we only stayed a little bit there. It wasn't as interesting for us. So then we got on the plane and we were kind of hopscotching around South America. We went from Montevideo, which is in Uruguay, and flew to Santiago, Chile, and then got another plane and went further south, which is where Patagonia is. And our destination was Puerto Montt. And there is where our real journey began. That is Patagonia. That's the beginning of getting to Patagonia. And Patagonia was pretty much cut off from people until recently, where the government made a road to that part of Chile because it had just been inaccessible, because it's very wild. If anybody's ever heard about the kayaking, the mountaineering, the incredible vistas, and not to mention what's happening in the sea with the sailors, it's true. It's just incredible. I mean, I have been to many places. Like Iceland was very mind-blowing too, in a different way. You felt like you were on a different planet there, almost very volcanic, hardly any flora. But Patagonia to me was just like being, it felt like I was on acid the whole time I was there. And I haven't even touched acid since like the 60s, But it's mind expanding. It just puts you into a different frame of mind when nature is so big and so tremendously untouched and natural and healthy. And, there are, in many places there's drought. All the water in the world has gone to Patagonia. Because water is just constantly recycling. So if there's drought in one place, there's going to be a lot of water coming to another place. We all know that. It's like living in a terrarium with our atmosphere. Nothing is lost. Everything just keeps getting recycled. So to be in a place where just one waterfall after the next, one valley that's filled with these bright purple wildflowers called lupin. And it's like having a carpet. Everything's covered with bright lavender, violet, and some kind of pink things. And it's not just a flower here or there, it's carpeted. So instead of seeing a green meadow, you see these beautiful, psychedelic looking lavender valleys that go on and on and on. And it was visually, I was just like mind blown. And Carter is a photographer and a filmmaker. He's busy clicking away, and I'm like, whoa. Well, I just like was in an altered state. It was so beautiful. I mean, very peaceful and restful. And because nobody had been there since the pandemic, people were so happy to see us because we were the very first people who came. There were still people who were, wearing masks, and you heard there was little outbreaks here and there of COVID, but we just didn't do anything dumb. And the Airbnb places we went to were so grateful, and the prices were amazingly reasonable. I mean, just absurdly reasonable, because they hadn't had any customers for, 3 years or something. So Patagonia, we made our way down to Coyhaique, which is probably the biggest city before you actually have to take ferries to get to the Ushuaia and places like that. And so it's just one of the trips that I would recommend to anybody who loves nature. It's all about nature. And that's my goal in life. I've already been to Paris and London and, all those places. And I'm an artist. I go to the museums. I know about the Louvre. I know about Tate. I know about all of that. But nature is, to me, the throne that should be worshipped now more than ever. And wherever we can go to experience that it is still alive and well and thriving in this planet, where everybody's so concerned about, are we losing everything? I mean, it's nice to be reminded that there are some places in this world that can still awe us, like the Grand Canyon. But unfortunately, there's so many tourists there, but that's okay, because everybody wants to see beauty. And so Patagonia was the final trip. And one day, my husband and I just looked at each other and we said, we can't absorb any more beauty. And it was just so magnificent. We actually cut our trip short by a couple of weeks, because we're kind of like staggering around, like your brain goes a little numb when it's had so much input. And we'd already gone through the seasons. We wanted to avoid all the family stuff, all the holiday stuff, all the presents, all the feasts. We didn't do any of that. We just had a quiet time with ourselves and nature and adventure. Every day was a different adventure. And so when we were absorbed with it, we hopped on a plane and came home and began the next adventure here, home.
I'm just curious, when you're going to things like that, do you find when you're painting that it inspires you and you see a change in your art?
Oh, everything adds up, just every single little thing you see or hear or do or study or get affected by or feel that tingle of excitement and connection, it all adds up in our subconscious mind. So right now, for instance, the latest painting I did was the cover for my next book, which is an amazing book, but the cover came out, wow. I couldn't ask for a better cover. Thank you, Great Spirit, for letting me be the conduit for this message. And I'm not even going to tell you the title, because somebody might steal my title, but it's going to be launched. So people should definitely visit my website and sign up for my list so they know about this book. But the next series I'm going to be doing are about the indigenous down in Tierra del Fuego. And I must tell you about them because they're so intriguing. Unfortunately, they are now extinct. When we were down there, the very last woman who spoke the language died at the age of 100 or something. And of course, there are hybrid people, but she was the last of the totally indigenous from Tierra del Fuego. And these people were so acclimated to living in that rough terrain. They did not wear clothes. They were naked, and they would cover themselves with the skin of this animal called guanaco. Guanaco is in the llama family, but it's smaller than a llama. And since ancient times, the tribes down there were two, the Salcan and the Ona, they would live totally on the guanaco, which were just abundant. And there were no vegetables there. There were no roots. There were no berries. We're talking about, the very tip of South America, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Antarctica. So it's cold. So these people would just wear the hide, the cured hide, obviously not blood and guts. And the men would carry a bow and arrow under their cape. So if they saw a guanaco, they could just get the cape off and go for killing the guanaco. And when the missionaries came from England, which was 18-something in the 19th century, they taught them how to grow corn and beans. And the Indians said, wow, where did we get all this energy? Because they'd never had a carb. They totally lived on protein. And if anybody's gone on any of these no-carb diets, you know that the body needs carbs, even to function in our brains. And so these Indians are so fascinating to me because they also had, obviously, a very spiritual connection to nature. And my next series of paintings are going to be about my relating to their spirituality, which has a lot to do with nature, of course, being naked, because I never paint pictures with people having clothes on, because I usually make them blue. That's their spiritual body. Forget race, forget gender, forget color of your skin. Your spirit is the thing that I paint. And so I always go for blue, just because that way there's no wondering, like, where are we at here? With what race are we talking about? Where are we at? It doesn't even matter if somebody wants to know that. They can put the spin on that. So the indigenous are going to be the theme. And also, I'm marrying it with, I'm fascinated with language, obviously, as a writer. And the very first language that I can, besides hieroglyphics and, all those cuneiform things, was Sanskrit and the Celtic language, which the very first one of the Druids was all about trees. And I learned about the Celtic, well, you must know, because you're from Ireland, but the Celtic original alphabet is all based upon, like, the pine tree is like A and the sycamore would be whatever. See, it doesn't correlate with English at all, but I learned about this by reading a book called Let the Trees Speak by Diana. Let me think if I don't have her name on the tip of Kroger, her last name, Beresford Kroger. Beautiful book. So I marry language with the indigenous. That's going to be my next series. And where does this come from? Inspiration comes from the subconscious. That's why it's really important to meditate. Although in my world, my YouTube channel, I call them mind stillers, because it's not like you have to go into a cave or anything. You just learn to shut off the rackaroo, the input. They call it the ego. A good acronym for ego is easing God out. Well, God is also an acronym for good orderly direction. We're not talking about like a guy in the sky. We're just talking about that true connection of our natural spirit, which the indigenous lived. And so this started off by you asking me about my inspiration. So it comes from everything. And I've even done paintings about, like, what I don't like the material world, and too much business, and too much this, too much that. I mean, I'll just have them kind of on the sideline and pushing them away, because that's not important to me. What's really important is that connection of where we came from and where we're going, the source, consciousness.
Like you mentioned about, the Druids in Ireland. Like, I mean, from what I gather, it was all forests and everything. It was all the trees. It was the English when they came in, I mean, because they destroyed the country. And I mean, I think even what they were saying about the famine and the blight, that was all a lie. I mean, there's one guy, Chris Fogarty, I think is his name, he's explaining exactly what really happened. But apparently there was all magical forests there. And I just know myself that when I'm back, there's some places that have incredible energy. I'm not sure if you actually had the chance to go to Ireland, and I'm curious.
Yeah.
No. But
Yeah, I've been to the UK, but I haven't been to Ireland. And you should read this book then, Let the Trees Speak. It's all about the last of the Druids. And the author herself, who is a natural scientist. She's like a botanist, and all about the natural world. And she decided, all her previous books were about nature and science. She said, it's time people know what I've been given by her people. And she was embraced by the very last of the inner circle of the Druids. So yes, I do know the story. I guess I'm hesitant to go to Ireland just because I don't like it cold. I keep going down to the South American plains, and I love places.
So go in May and you'll be okay. Like that's you get the 2 weeks of sun for the whole year. The rest of the rains.
Oh yeah, you tell me exactly when the sun's going, and I'll go. Yeah, but I don't mind rain. I like rain. I just don't like cold.
That's not that cold.
Yeah. I went to school in Boston. I had it with Boston, Maine, and all that stuff. I know cold weather. Yeah. But it's just like my name, we have choices. I can choose to be anywhere, but one of my nicknames is Tropical Tez. I have created a tropical, like bamboo, a forest where I live here in the middle of suburbia. There's no grass. It's all just like 80-foot tall cones of bamboo, the timber bamboo, because I love bamboo forests. I love the sound. I love the magic of the swaying, all that.
So there's you're extremely creative with the writing, the art, everything you do. But the way the world has kind of gone, a lot of people are kind of depressed at the moment. How would you encourage people to kind of bring joy into their life?
Well, the solution will be through our connection with our creativity. The solution for anything, name it. I don't even, we can't, the problems are, I don't have enough fingers. I got my toes and everything counting. But the creative force, which is what happens when you're tuned into the spiritual energy of life, and you're not blocking it, and you're not numbing it with drugs and alcohol, or too much sex, or too much shouting, or too much TV, or all that stuff numbs it. When you're truly allowing this force to come through you, it's all about creation. Because the universe itself is about creation. So in order for new things to be created, old things must be destroyed. They have to be destroyed. And so when the pandemic came, for instance, I was really happy because a lot of people were pretty miserable. And I said, wow, maybe they'll find the door to happiness is not out there, not going to a football game or blah, 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 partying and blah, blah. Maybe it's within them. And that's why I started putting out the mind stillers and doing, really silly little things by just saying, hey, just calm down. It's okay. This is where the joy is. The joy is within us. It's not outside. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows the rich people are not necessarily happy. The billionaires are usually the ones who are the most miserable, in my experience. And the people who have true happiness are the ones who connect with the simple things of life. And so, yes, there are a lot of people who are upset and angry and afraid and anxious and all those other negative things right now. And all I can say is, this is the natural flow, the ebb and flow of creation, destruction, and you have to create with your creativity valve. And by creation, I mean, okay, maybe somebody's born today who is going to be the inventor of the cure for cancer. We don't know. And then there's other people who say, oh, I wouldn't bring a kid into this world. It's too visible. Well, how do you know that that kid isn't going to be the one who unites us all and brings us into another elevation of being humans, which I call Homo spiritus. The Homo sapiens, which we are called, it's because we have knowledge. Well, screw the knowledge. We've made too many mistakes. What we need to be is more into our spirit, Homo spiritus. And I talk about that in my book called Hybrid Vigor. Because anybody who's listening to this, you are a hybrid vigor because you're interested in this topic. And so the answer for all solutions is consciousness. It's not about politics. It's not about sitting down and being yay or nay about what's going on with wars and all that stuff. It's really about the connection that we have with our moment right here, right now. And my connection, I mean, even if if a guy came to my door with a gun sticking in my face right now, and he said, give me everything you got or I'm going to kill you, I would just say, this is life, and this is the energy of life, and whatever happens is going to happen. There's nothing I can do to stop it, but what I can do is be here in this moment and to feel alive.
Well, you can hope that your husband has a tennis racket and whacks him over the head.
Oh, yeah. But if he's not even home, I mean, I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't just or throw something at him. I would feel that connection because I believe in reincarnation. As a little kid, they gave me the whole heaven and hell thing. I'm sorry. I didn't buy it. When I discovered reincarnation, that's not like I don't respect life. I totally love life. But I know that if I can't achieve happiness in this lifetime, which I already have, because I've already been to hell, and in recovery, we have this saying, we recovering addicts know about heaven because we've already been to hell. And everything after, you give up your addictions is heaven. We make this place here our heaven or our hell. But if somebody is going to take my life, I would say, well, there's nothing I can do, really, except, maybe hide and duck and try to be smart. And as far as wars and the climate coming apart and a possible another pandemic, if these things are happening, this is the ebb and the flow of the journey, the ebb and the flow, the ebb and the flow. And there might be wars going on and people dying all around, which of course happens, and it is happening. But inside myself, I have the choice of saying, I can either say, this is horrible and ugly, and I'm just going to be pissed off, or I can say, I see that this is part of life. And I'm not going to let it ruin this minute, this connection right here with this thing called the human experience. I'm not going to let that ruin it. I've had death, a lot of death in my circle, even most recently, just very recently, and a lot of hardships and a lot of heartaches. And life is tough. Life is tough, but I choose to stay in that center, which I call my heart, instead of the mind. I don't want to be in my head. I want to be in the heart. And when you can get those two aligned, that's when you're cooking. And the creativity valve happens when you just open yourself up and just allow yourself to be truly a tool.
And I thoroughly enjoyed this, but just finally, because a lot of people want to write, or they and because you've, even from the cell that you the writing was fun, so even though if it was you need to have your magnifying glass to read that, but in your writing now, have you found something that allows you to become a better writer?
Oh yeah, I'm doing my audiobook right now, and so I'm the one that I'm publishing very soon. Excuse me, I've got a little frog in there. And I am honestly amazed because I have learned to like shut off the ego in the creative process. And so whether it's writing or painting or sculpting or whatever, the creativity, or making a film, and my husband and I make films too. And when you allow yourself to be like that, just an open vow, when you go back to see a work, like I'm reading this audiobook, I say, how did I do that? I don't know. I really don't know. But in order to get to that place, of course, we have to learn how to do our grammar, learn how to type, learn how to, be patient, learn a work ethic. And with art, you got to learn about color. You got, you have to do your basics. So you do your basics and you practice and you go to the museums and you copy the great ones. And I was an expert copier. As a teenager, I just like copied everything. I copy all the encyclopedias, all the birds, all the flowers. And I started my art career being a botanical illustrator. And I know how to do realism, but to me, realism is boring. So in order to be creative, you just have to first learn the basics and then just be a conduit. And literally, when you approach a blank slate, whether it's a blank sheet of paper that you're putting words on or a blank canvas or a blank blob of clay, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't. You just let yourself be with the energy, and the energy will direct you. And that's why I'm not panicked about the human race. I'm not panicked about who's going to be the political person, because that's not my realm. My realm is the creative realm and the spiritual realm. That's where I can be, connected to my truth. And everybody has this. Everybody has a creative energy, and they just have to learn to be content with that and to trust it. I've taught many people who said, I can't be creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body. And that's a lie. It's a lie that people tell themselves.
Beautiful. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. teZa, you might let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to you, Roy. Well, I have my website, the mothership, teZa Lord, that's spelled TEZA.LORD, and everything's there. The books, the art, the YouTube, everything is there.
Sure, I'll put the link above the audio and the video.
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. And God bless everybody.
So that's all for the speaking and the meditation podcast. And be sure to share this with your friends, because there's some beautiful messages in the episode. And you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour, help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.